Hi, it's Kirby Sommers. Today is October 24th, 2025, and I want to discuss what I have been sort of experiencing and sharing with you some of the deep dives that I have taken on, now commencing in my seventh year, after discovering that Virginia um, was R-worded by her father, Sky Roberts. And she wrote about this in her memoir. Now, I did not know this, and I'm sure many of you did not know this. Um, but we now know this that this is what happened, um, and it is something that I had a lot of trouble with, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it because clearly Virginia didn't really have a chance. But I want to say that it is the world we have all grown up in, all of us, because of social conditioning. Virginia also wanted to share certain things that she couldn't speak about publicly, nor has she written about in her book. And that is about the normalization of having the S situation with uh, even, you know, younger girls than she was at the age of 7. Now, what I have put on the screen is a painting called Little Miss Red Tomato. It's a beauty pageant. This painting was purchased by one of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged victims, and it hung in his home. This is a recurring theme. Virginia tried to tell us in her tweets about the daughter of a couple she does not name, but who we do not need. I think most of you who are following this are very well aware of who she is referring to. Virginia supplied the FBI with a photograph she had taken inside of J.E.'s Palm Beach mansion of a 5-year-old girl, the daughter of this couple, the girl about whom she tweets about here. And in the photograph, which I included in an article, I'm going to read a portion of that article to you here and perhaps go back through my notes and share some other things that perhaps you may be unaware of. And in the photograph, the little girl is sort of like, leaning against something and pulling down her undie. I have to be very careful on this platform, as most of you who are on this YT are aware of. And, pulling down her little undies. And this was provided to the FBI. Now, what I have discovered in looking at the finders, looking at the Franklin situation, looking at what is referred to as the JE, it's much bigger than this, and I've been saying this the whole time, and I sound maybe like a broken record, but maybe people need to hear a broken record because while Virginia tried to bring awareness to a bigger problem, which would be that, and then of course this atrocity of her own father not only doing this unspeakable thing to her, but sharing her. So, what we have to understand is that this is embedded into our society. This is probably much more normal than not. I know that for myself, growing up in New York as a little girl, in my home, in my bed, in my bedroom, while my mother would put us to sleep in our pajamas, I woke up many nights with my pajama bottoms pushed down to my ankles. And I know that I approached my mother many times about things that were inappropriate that were happening to me under our own roof. And my mother did nothing about it. Now, I blame, there are social engineers. And on the screen, I've put an image, a cartoon image of Leslie Wexner and Mick Jagger. Now, again, this is embedded into our culture, into our belief system. I have been writing about this nonstop for, now commencing on the 7th year. And by the way, I want to thank all of you who are here, all of you who are listening to this podcast, all of you who share the podcast, all of you who have supported my work. I am honored beyond my ability to tell you, each and every one of you, how you have impacted my life, how you have given me a platform where our sharing of information, because we've been doing this as a group, you have helped me. And together we continue to spread awareness, because by spreading awareness, we can keep our children safe. We can teach women and men that there are certain things that are imposed upon us as children via the multiple media outlets that are flashing in front of our eyes. Perhaps in my time, in your time, it was television and the radio and the movies, but this stuff has increased. And now we have very sexualized images, basically pornography, reaching our children via games. So our children, there have been studies showing that 7-year-old boys are addicted to pornography. It's not that one day 7-year-old boys decided to search for pornography. No, it's that pornography is delivered to them via various websites in the form of cartoons or games. And this is not just happening in third world countries or in specific countries. It is happening in the United States. And so what happens is that we know that there's a hypersexualization of children. It has been going on. We see it in our generation, and there are probably 2 or 3 generations listening here. And I will be going over some information in a deeper manner, but we see it, for example, when 10-year-old Brooke Shields posed for the Playboy-owned Sugar and Spice, completely nude, heavily made up in a bathtub. Now, we have seen that, and I just want to give you a heads up that there are a couple of books that, a lot of my books basically are interlocking pieces. In fact, I would say most of them interlock. And in my Gerald Ford MK Ultra series, which is a 2-book volume, I have written a deep dive on Brooke Shields and her connection to this world, because what I need to make clear is that anyone who achieves household status name, they know they're part of the demonic agenda. There really is a demonic agenda. Like, even when I began going, let's call it a rabbit hole. I mean, there have been many rabbit holes, because the tentacles of this are vast and they reach very far. As some of the information that I'm going to share with you for the first time, you're going to be able to say, oh my God, this is even bigger than I thought. And it's even bigger than I thought. And it's only, I would say, within the, like, initially when I heard, let's say, that there were SATANIC references, I was like, that's a little far. That's a little, that's a little outside my ability to either believe and or even comprehend. But I have to say that the more I dig into this, the more I realize that it is true. And so my let's say my books, the Gerald Ford MK Ultra, don't be fooled by Gerald Ford, the title, because you're going to be stunned at what that reveals. Not only does it reveal, and I'll just give you a spoiler right now, that Ford is related to Larry Lawrence King of the Franklin situation, but it reveals much more. And then I have my series on Leslie Wexner called Merchant of Death. Volume 1 is ready to be picked up if you guys are interested. It's on my website. Volume 2, I'm going to be uploading and making that available very, very soon. But Leslie Wexner, make no doubt about the fact that Leslie Wexner was selected to be very much like a Gloria Steinem. Gloria Steinem was selected to be an infiltrator of the women's movement, which, while it may have begun as a grassroots attempt to, quote, help women, and ultimately it did not really help women, right? Ultimately, Gloria Steinem's agenda on behalf of the CIA, which she admitted, in 1960s, but what people never say, like Gloria Steinem or even CIA with regard to their MK Ultra program, oh, it was ended. Steinem's like, oh yeah, I did this for this number of years, but she doesn't then go on to explain, nor does she admit that what she did was work covertly for the CIA in order to subvert the women's, quote, liberation movement, which was an attempt to then do double taxation, splinter the family unit, because if you do not have a strong family unit, you don't have a strong family, you don't have anyone to depend on, you're on your own, and therefore each member of the family, the mother, the father, split, with the children then being fair game to anyone, and making mothers leave the house. You're no longer taking care of your children, so they become wards of the state, because most of the children go to public schools. Public schools are provided to you by your friendly intelligence assets too. Frankly, there is almost nothing, not music, not the games, the video games, not most of the books that we have read by mainstream writers, our news. There's almost nothing that is actually real. It's all propaganda and it's all mind control. Now, it took me a long time to figure out the SATANIC aspect of this, but it is what it is. And so I'm gonna probably begin reading just a little bit of an article I uploaded to my Substack, and thank those of you here who have become members of my Substack. That's really where I feel the safest. Yesterday I uploaded to my Patreon an article from my Substack, and I rarely do that. I keep different information on different platforms, but I felt it was just so important. To share information that I didn't know. I didn't, like, my research keeps opening doors to new places. And I think that's actually a good thing, because while it's ongoing research, and I suppose I could probably continue to research for 10, 20 years and I'll still be surprised. It brings up new names. That's the great thing about research. The names that we don't hear about. So, for example, we hear about Prince Andrew. We know about Lord Mountbatten, for example. In fact, I believe one or two of you made comments about Mountbatten, and I made an article on my Substack free for everyone showing how perverse that situation was with receipts. But these new names then opened the door for us to explore this further and then explore, oh, okay, there are now connections to uh, very young children, 3 years old, 4 years old, things that you would think would never happen. Um, so I'm going to just say that a lot of us, we're familiar with what happened, let's say, in the 1960s. And, I pause because I wonder where I'm going to begin this. I mean, look, we know that CIA and Tavistock worked collaboratively. Wexner used Tavistock's science of the mind as a mind destruction technique, which basically results in what it always results in, which is the brainwashing of the masses, meaning us, you and me. We became consumers. We became consumers of the type of clothing that Leslie Wexner made and the likes of Leslie Wexner. However, he became one of the world's preeminent clothing uh, empire. I mean, that's what he had through the Victoria's Secret. However, I have images on my Substack showing little girls, 3 to 4, dressed up like Victoria's Secret models in the runway. So that while what is presented to the public primarily, and by the way, Victoria's Secret just launched in New York their new fashion show. Gigi Hadid posted on her Instagram how she was working out because she needed to keep her rear end lifted for the show. These women perpetuate the really misinformed vision of what women should look like. We should not look like porn actresses. There should be no porn at all. This has been implemented into our world, into our lives, our day to day lives, that women and little girls and young teenage girls that don't know how to protect themselves should look like porn actresses, should wear skimpy attire, you know. However, it is the intelligence agencies who basically work behind the scenes, and it's a surreptitious assault on our freedom. It modifies our behavior. It's the use of psychology, but it's lost on most of the people. It's like essentially what Wexner has been up to is normalizing rape culture. That's specifically his role. Normalize rape culture. And rape culture means some of the stuff that happened to Virginia with her father. It is stunning. It is heartbreaking, but we have to look at it for what it is. It is normal. It is more normal than not. And why is it normal? It's New World Order stuff, because using children, R-wording children, unaliving children has been and continues to be the dirty little secret of the world's elite. Now, in one of Wexner's companies called La Senza, targeted at girls 5-year-old. But remember that when something is targeted to a 5-year-old, which is very young, a 3-year-old is going to aspire to be like the 5-year-old sister, right? So he sold T-shirts for these little girls that read T-shirts with a slogan across the area of the chest: "Who needs brains when you have these?" And then another one was, "I had a nightmare, I was a brunette." Now, he targeted this to his teenage clientele, urging them to give this to their 5-year-old sister. However, he also sold thongs to 5-year-olds. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. So we're talking about something like this. This was in J.E.'s house. Clearly, we see girls 4 years old, approximately. That's what I see here. It brings to mind John Benet Ramsey, who was also another victim of this ongoing bloodline. Satanic. Sorry, I have to spell on this platform. What happens and how we're used and disposed, and if you age out, like they told Virginia she was aging out, then in the JE case, which is frankly what they all are, because so for example, I hear some people coming down on Virginia and others like her. Oh, well, she recruited. Well, so did the victims of the Franklin case. And so, it's just a historical thing. And if you go back and you study the other ones that came before that, like I've studied the ones from the 1940s and the 1950s and the 1960s, and frankly, they all carry over into the following, let's call reemergence of the same thing. Those children, boys and girls, are taught that you have to bring in young ones, because young ones, so if we look at the case of Johnny Gosh, according to Paul Benassi, he was the one who initially approached Johnny Gosh on the street. And of course, a child will pay more attention to another child, hence the reason why children become recruiters, people. And unless you understand the mentality behind children recruiting other children, then we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting anywhere. So there was a lieutenant governor at the time. Um, so in Michigan, the National Organization for Women and Concerned Christian Americans were among the groups who called out Abercrombie and Fitch's catalog as soft porn, even though, quite frankly, a lot of the images, if you look through their magazine, can be considered pornographic images, not soft porn, in my opinion. So, but even the Michigan Attorney General's office denounced the magazine. Now, uh, Corinne Wood was at the time the lieutenant governor of Illinois from 1999 to 2003. And in order to bring awareness to the practices of the very demonic Leslie Wexner, and you haven't even heard the tip of the iceberg of what I just broke yesterday. Okay. She created a website urging a boycott of Abercrombie and Fitch. The website, however, was hacked and was taken over by a porn website. Now, they could not fix the issue, and they were forced to take it down. Now, what Corinne Wood did at the time was she focused on the older, let's say, children, teenagers. As you can see, this is a page I was able to get my hands on approximately 6 years ago. Her website had been gone. Much of the information had been scrubbed. I began writing about this in 2019. I knew that there was something wrong with Leslie Wexner. I myself, through my own abuser, who was part of this elite ring, I have to say. I mean, I was very familiar with the name Wexner and Leslie Wexner as it pertained to my own abuser and as it pertained to his family connections. And so that's how I basically came into this, being very aware of that. So the website was made to disappear and they couldn't fix the issue. It would redirect to a porn website. And that was courtesy of Leslie Wexner, who did not want this information to be made public. Now, I believe I include all of that in my book one of The Merchant of Death. Now, the other thing that it struck me, and I'm going to add that to the stage. Now, that is an associate of Wexner's, who I only just recently realized was an associate of Wexner's. And this associate of Wexner's is into, was into, I initially wrote 4-year-olds because, like from 4 to 13. But I had to post an update on the article that I uploaded yesterday on my Substack, and I'll leave a link to that below. Because this was what was initially thought to be contained within a group of elite men. Again, elite men with connections to powerful politicians, bringing in a lot of other men from other countries, having parties with children. And these parties, and we're familiar with parties with children, right? Because if you think about Franklin and the information that we know about Franklin and the information that we know about J.E., we know that there are these parties. Now, what happens in these parties with children of various ages, which you probably are aware of some of it, but there are children as young as 3. And even though I'd heard the age 3 via the Paul Benassi story and via the Franklin situation and via what happened in San Francisco with Colonel Michael Aquino. I call him Aquino. Some of you call him Aquino. I don't know. I seem to fall into the Aquino. And by the way, I delve into his connection with Rachel Chandler in my book, Chasing Chandler, which I updated. It's got a lot of new information, about 100 pages of new information. And that's Chasing Chandler, volume 3 or 3rd edition, I think. So these parties with these children, and the men are sometimes request a certain age, a certain eye color, a certain this, a certain, and it's not just girls, it's boys as well. But these are the parties where they do business at. So this is an associate, a business associate of name. I'm going to just leave it blank for right this second for the algorithm. So I begin my article of yesterday in the aftermath of Virginia Giuffre's bombshell book, Nobody's Girl, where she valiantly exposes the horrors of her life, warts and all, letting the reader know that her father, sky robbers, R-worded her repeatedly, commencing at age 7, setting the groundwork for an endless series of men which culminated in Prince Andrew settling our allegations for his indiscretions. We find ourselves no longer able to say, we do not know about human trafficking. Literally, Virginia did that. Virginia made the world aware that this is an ongoing problem. She gave voice to many who had no voice. And she made it possible for the first time to be believed. Because even in the Me Too movement, that sort of was like, it only really, you saw actresses, well-known names talking about Me Too, Me Too, Me Too regarding Harvey Weinstein. It kicked off a movement. It made the R word and S slavery, and how there's a patriarchy. And that's really at the crux of the problems that our society and other societies in other countries have. We still live in a patriarchal system where women and children are subservient to men, and especially men of power. I'm going to continue. As the men who have been named scramble to regain control of the narrative amid suspicion that the J.E. and Ghislaine Maxwell criminal syndicate of human trafficking is not contained, that its tentacles reach into every country where no child, neither girl or boy of any age, be they 3 or 23, is safe. Because whether you're 3 or 23, it's the same crime. It's especially heinous when it's a tiny child. But it lingers on as a malignant tumor, even if you're 23, okay, or 24, 25, when someone invades the most precious of your body. I mean, to be forcibly R-worded happens in a number of ways: psychologically, mental manipulation, a promise of even if you're working a 9 to 5, a promise of a promotion. It's very difficult not to get upset while I am doing some of these podcasts and sharing information with you. So, what I have to say to you is that I unearthed another a transportation ring with many child victims that not one legacy media outlet in the United States has ever discussed. Not only have not I don't think they've made the connection. Maybe they have, but they clearly, the mainstream media, we still live in the world of mockingbird media. They're going to write what they're going to write. They're going to write propaganda. They're going to write a narrative that has been sanitized by the powers that be. Okay. So that very few outlets, we have independent voices now. We have a very limited reach. Therefore, subscribing, sharing, commenting helps to spread the algorithm so that a platform like mine and other people who are basically exposing these atrocities can be heard by a bigger audience. But for the most part, what people tend to listen to and to hear and to be exposed to is what has been sanitized by the very people who are committing these crimes. So these so-called rings are in fact connected. They're interwoven. It is the norm. It's not the exception. So I'm going to read a portion of a victim testimony, as much of it as I can. I met him when I was 9. I went to his house, me and other girls. He was with his wife. They let us play and then sent us home with their chauffeur with some money to buy candy or anything we wanted. One day he took me to his bedroom. He began to touch me and told me that every father does that to his daughter, and because I don't have a father and he loves me, he hurt me. I'm going to leave that blank. I cried and cried, but he would not stop. Later he took me down to the living room and sat me down very close to my brother. He told him to touch me. She is talking about what he instructed her brother to do to her while they were being filmed, by the way. While they were being filmed. Clearly, my brother didn't want to. He screamed. But Johnny is very big and very strong, and he forced us. So the investigator who was the first to hear this story from this then 20-year-old girl who attempted to take the matter to court said, "But why did you and your brother and the other girls return?" And her response is, "One time we were in his bedroom after he did things to me. He wanted me to go to the kitchen, and there he showed me a knife, a very big knife. And he told me he was going to cut me up into pieces. He is the devil. He told me that if I behaved and obeyed, everything would be fine. I would go to a good school, and he would buy me clothes and pretty things. But if I told anyone, that person would be unalived. I told my mother. If I told my mother, she would be unalived." And so, we have the ongoing threats. And so, we know that Leslie Wexner is an American billionaire. He is the founder of The Limited. It was later renamed L Brands, only later to be changed again to Bath and Body Works. Why the multiple name changes? Because once he was exposed as being close to JE, he had to rebrand. And he's had to rebrand a couple of times. And that is what corporations do when there is a scandal that becomes a little too big, meaning that a lot of eyes are on it. However, he is the principal of La Senza, who I just shared with you some of the stuff that was happening at La Senza. We know about Victoria's Secret. We know about Abercrombie and Fitch. Now, Mike Jeffries was, who ran Abercrombie and Fitch. He was arrested with two of his um, co, two of his partners, let's say, on October 22nd, 2024. He was in charge of A&F, and they were charged with transportation of men, young men. This is uh, known. Some of you may have been keeping up with what's happening with Mike Jeffries, and of course, he has convinced the court that he is too old to stand trial, and there's some stuff going on. And the question keeps coming back, are any of these men going to be held responsible? And that is a great question that every one of you, I am sure, is asking. And I will say to you that because of our ongoing examination into this problem, we are holding them responsible. Not only was Jean-Luc Brunel arrested, somehow he, like J.E., they're no longer alive. Prince Andrew is exposed as having been part of this world, having knowledge of this world, and it's much darker. It's much darker than even what's been made public. However, his comfort level. So, for example, for me, I'm aware because I try to get my abuser into a court setting, only to realize, oh, wait a minute, his sister is sitting on the board of, there was a thing where if you don't have the means, it will help you pay for the attorney. And his sister was sitting on the board, so that I realized that the odds were stacked against me. I couldn't get any legal help, although I tried. And then, um, so the court system may not always be the way we get help. Those of us who have been in a situation like this, be it with a person from the elite world or someone else. What has brought me some peace in my life has been to name and shame. So my ability to write my memoir, my ability to focus on this issue and help other people by focusing on this issue and bringing awareness to what is really a much more common problem than we originally ever thought, is, if you can only name and shame, that's a big thing. So Prince Andrew Windsor, as people are beginning to refer to him, in anticipation of him perhaps being stripped of his prince title, despite the fact that he is the legitimate son of Queen Elizabeth. Okay. However, you naming and shaming is a form of justice because you upset the equilibrium of that person's reputation, which is what they have historically done to victims. Victims have historically been categorized as extortionists, liars, fantasists, people not to be believed. We collectively, those of you who are listening to me here, we collectively have turned that right back in the faces of these horrific monsters who abuse people that are much more vulnerable than them. And I give so much credit to Virginia for outing her father. You know, I'm still, again, you can hear me kind of pause here because I'm still, again, really upset that this happened to her. And then, of course, what happens? You think that you're the one that has done something wrong. You blame yourself. When you blame yourself, your self esteem is lowered. Then you settle for someone like Virginia, and many of us, frankly, me too. You settle for someone who is unworthy of you, like Virginia did by selecting the man that she married, whom she naively believed was her answer, because she didn't know how to look for this for uh the the flashing neon signs of what another abuser is going to look like. And the lesson that we have to learn from that is, if it's too easy, if it's telling you, if someone is telling you they're going to solve all your problems, look at it a little deeper. Take a step back. Do not be in a hurry to be not alone. It's much better to be alone and safe than to be with somebody like Virginia, who ended up with this horrific man who beat her to a pulp. So let that be a lesson to all of us, to be careful. There are good people in the world. I would say the majority of people are good, but one has to be as diligent in finding a person under whose roof you want to live as you would be if you were buying, let's say, a secondhand car, because everyone is secondhand now. We're no longer going into things as pure as the driven snow. Okay, we're going into things uh, being somewhat battered, and of course we're going to be battered because the system has been set up to make us perpetual victims. I have another talk that at some point I'll do about the perpetual victim syndrome. However, uh, getting back to Wexner's ties with clearly a child R person, no one had made this connection until I did in the article of yesterday, which again is on my Substack. And now these men did business with Wexner. They are connected to, let's say, Donald Trump, which I will be doing in a following installment. And, I'm not a political person. Virginia, I uploaded a tweet the other day, said she doesn't support any candidate. Um, it's not just the blue party, the red party. It's not one country or another party or another country. It's like everyone in power. You have to be, you have to look at them with, the way you look at a Hollywood actor, the way you look at a singer that's rose to prominence, uh, and not for nothing, but I started this with an image of Mick Jagger. And as a side note, just going off on a tangent for a minute, Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones, again, if you go into his history, like I have in my work, his connections to, let's say, people who worship, look, people who worship Lucifer, okay, and his ties to that world in his early days, even making a film with a Luciferian. Do you think that Mick Jagger, who has been photographed, by the way, with Ghislaine Maxwell, do you think Mick Jagger in his 80s wants to necessarily be touring? But he is still touring. And, I mean, the Rolling Stones, they're like in their 80s, right? And but Jagger did make a deal with the devil so that a household name, be it a musician, an artist like Mick Jagger, be it a politician, they're in the same they're working with the same group of people that are a level above, they're even a level above the intelligence apparatus, if you will. And so like Wexner, who became a funnel for JE and became a mind conditioning tool for the masses, including our children, who I have just connected to a person caught on camera discussing his preference for little girls as young as 4. This is, this is just, while it's startling to hear, it's jarring, it's upsetting. I think we have to move forward, know that it's a norm. Now, I'm going to go back to Virginia's tweet because she was trying to explain it to us. She was trying to say that this was also happening, but she was doing it with a wink, wink, and being very subtle about it because I know that she was getting death threats by the parents of this girl. And again, we have this image of a painting owned by JE. And then suddenly I discover that, oh, wait a minute, Wexner is a business associate of people who were caught R-wording as young as 3. As young as 3. I had to update my article of earlier, of yesterday, earlier this morning, to say, oh my God. So I realized that it's as young as 3. And okay, let me take this to the next step. What happens when somebody exposes these connections, this world that is still new to a lot of people? Well, there are journalists and there are investigators who are not just issued death threats, but who are in fact unalived. In this particular case, there was a very brave journalist who was improperly incarcerated, who was R-worded, who was tortured, who experienced all kinds of horrors, who had to flee for her life. I myself, even on this platform on YouTube, I have to be very careful, and I have somebody going through all of the comments to make sure, because I am getting a lot of pushback even on Elon Musk's X channel. A lot of my tweets have been flagged, and I don't have to remind those of you who know me very well that Elon Musk, when he purchased Twitter, before he renamed it X, he made my entire account disappear in November of 2022. So that not only did I uh, personally survive 3 attempts on my life that I know of, and I'm sure there are possibly more that, if I, looking back in hindsight, there were more, but I kind of focus on 3 that are very obvious, that any one of us who exposes things, we take a risk. The risk, however, is balanced because we need to share this information with those of you who do not have the time to do your own research. I mean, I'm in my 7th year, and I honestly, I never thought I would get to the point where I could not only share the horrors of my life, but I can share now the horrors of children across the world who have been entrapped in a system of slavery. So a lot of these girls, even the ones that are a little older, say they're 11, they're 12, they're 13, they're offered modeling opportunities. They're offered um, jobs, which was the MO, or they're offered education, which is the MO that these enslavers use. And of course, they don't normally, typically, 9 times out of 10, they don't deliver on those promises. It's just a way to uh, grab someone who is trusting and ensnare them into this area where they're going to be exploited. Now, in some cases, what I want to say is one of the victims of JE told me at some point that there were 500 girls that could not be found in Florida. And I was able to then discover there are certain things that happen in this world. So, for example, in 2004, 2003, 2005, a girl could fetch $3,000 to be sold to another one of these connected groups. And these groups are connected through the power, like through the elite connections that span the globe. And so this powerful person will do business with another powerful person, and it could even be, a member of uh, the drug world, because if the drug world is also connected to the human trafficking world, but typically uh, any investigation into the drug world does not really expose the other crimes that are associated with that, which is money laundering, which is the transportation of humans and all of that. Um, However, uh, these girls that are deemed to be of no further use are then unalived. Or they're unalived if they try to run for it and they're caught and they don't make it out, they're unalived. And so, yeah, I mean, there's uh, there are places in the world where girls are dumped, and they're said to be dumped there either by a serial unaliver, so that there's that, which I have written about as well. And then what happens when something is blamed on a serial unaliver, and I know I'm going on a tangent, but I just want to give you as much information as I can on this podcast, is that then the abusers, like the fathers who are R-wording children who are getting out of hand, or the husbands who want to get rid of their wives who are getting out of hand, or the boyfriend who wants to get rid of his girlfriend, for what, then they commit this crime and dump the body in the same place as the bodies of a known serial unaliver, so that they can get away with the crime of unaliving someone, because that body will then be tallied up and shown to the world as, oh, okay, this was, for example, this is Ted Bundy did this, or this was this serial killer or that serial killer. And again, my work has delved into some of these serial killers. However, I just wanted to um, do a podcast and share with you that it's much darker. It's a much darker world. This area that we're studying, and we are making a difference. And that's something that you can do on your own, would be to have your family members who have little ones to have their social media settings on private, because the way that they kidnap children is by having these helpers like a Galen. And there's something else that a Galen is used for, and I make note of that in this article. Again, I'll leave a link to that below. um, they look through the pages of social media to look for children that are attractive, and then they will go and snatch them, kidnap them. So in order to keep your children safe, you have to then protect your social media pages and not necessarily share with the whole world how beautiful your children are or how beautiful your grandchildren are, and to protect them, to just give your family and your friends another layer of protection, because we have to be involved in making sure that this doesn't happen to the ones that we love, in addition to spreading awareness to the people in our community, okay? So that maybe we don't have a very good system that takes care of this issue. Clearly, we see it happening right now. There is a blockage. The Epstein files are not necessarily going to be made public, right? There is, in the White House, we have a stop measure. Oh, we're not going to release these documents, despite the fact that we had all of those mommy bloggers go off to Washington, D.C. and collect the Epstein file folder number 1 with the promise of, okay, well, we are now holding on to a good deal of information. So we have to now work in our own community and ensure that there are places that people go to be safe, that information really is power. We turn the table. That was one of JE's favorite sayings: information is power. We are now using that as well. We have turned the table. Let's continue to utilize this newfound power that we have found ourselves having, and let's just keep going. Listen, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please like, please subscribe. And until next time, everybody, have a good day. Bye.